All right, so let's talk about how you can try to figure things out yourself. This is actually a different project. Because I do need to have actually the source code to be able to debug. Okay, so what I have here is in the actual C++ code, I looked through the AI perception system. Okay, and I looked at that. If I can go back to the header file, you can just sit back and see what I am saying here. So here, not the perception system, actually the component, AI perception component, and you can see there is actually a update. Look for that. SE guard, event graph, and on target perception update, right? So that's the one that triggers everything here. Okay, so oops, that's the other, but it's the same, right? So so you want to know what is calling this. So that's how I trace back through the logic. So that thing here is actually, I can look for, oops, it's a little slow here. But you can see there is actually a member variable called on-target perception update. Right, that's exactly what this is. Not this, actually what this is. Right, on-target perception update, the same name. Okay, this is a delegate. Anything subscribed to this delegate will be called when this delegate broadcasts. So I just need to know where does this guy broadcast. Okay, and so what I do is, again, I use fan reference. I'm using a plugin called Visual Assistant to help me to go faster, and it's just gonna look through the entire source code and see, you know, when does this variable get used. Okay, you can see the broadcast is over here, called, it's inside of this thing called process stimuli. Okay, close that. It's here. So the process stimuli then will be my interest. I need to know who calls this guy, right? But you know, oftentimes when this happens, you just have a lot of calling, trace back and forth. So I need to use debugging to make my life easier. So what I do is basically find somewhere and drop down some breakpoints, right? Or actually, let me just have the breakpoint over there on the broadcast, which is gonna be somewhere. Let me go back. Okay, this here, right? So here, I'm dropping down a breakpoint. Again, you have to use the source code, the actual GitHub version of Enegine to be able to do this. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna go for the debug, and then I'm gonna attach that to my process, which is my editor basically. So if I scroll down to my editor and attach that, you can see it's attached successfully. It's gonna go through some setup. When everything's done, then I can go back to my editor. Actually, now this guy, the other editor. If I can look for my other editor here. Oh, the editor is not even open. So let me actually. That's weird because this one is not it, so I can even close it. I need to know where the other guy goes. Oh, it's actually over here. Anyway, so in this guy, if I go ahead and play, and I try to run towards the guard, when I hit the point that the guard actually sees me, you can see now this actually got hit, right? So that's why the Visual Studio pops up and the editor actually freezes, right? So I got this, right? So you know that means the code actually runs to this particular point and say, okay, this is it, let's stop and do whatever you want. What I can do is I can go to the window, actually the debug window, and then I can look for the call stack over here and drag it here. You can see that's what's being called to the process all the way to that particular point. You can see it's calling a perception listener there. It's calling that, right? And then after that, it's getting called from the AI perception systems tick. So I know that this is keep getting called. It's in the tick here. And this one, right? This one was calling that. So you can see the steps, right, going backwards. So the tick of the perception system is keep calling that, calling this guy, keep calling the process stimuli. You can see that particular point here at this point is calling the process stimuli, right? And you can see there is actually a logic called has any new stimuli. So this has to be true to be able to do this. So I need to know when does this guy becomes true. And it makes sense because when it has any new stimuli, right? When it sees or hears anything new, then they process that new stimuli. So everything makes sense here. So I'm going to go inside this has any new stimuli and see what this guy is doing. And you can see it's trying to get this values, this Boolean value. Okay. So I'm going to say, okay, I need to know who actually changed this Boolean, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the breakpoints. I'm going to go for the debug windows, and I'm going to look for this guy called breakpoints. Okay, I'm going to add a new data breakpoint. Let me actually copy that guy here, and then type in a ampersand, and then it's and okay. Oops. Oh, it's actually not in there, so I have to actually go towards that particular function to do that. So let me actually go back to what I was doing here. So this guy, right? Actually go to the call stack. I'm gonna look for that. Right? Let me actually drop down a breakpoint over here. And so I know that this is gonna run, I can then use that. Okay, this is the nature of our engines, our Visual Studio's mechanic. Anyway, so let me go to the window and breakpoints. I'm gonna disable that one I was having here. Okay, and then this one here is my new breakpoint. I'm gonna do a continue. You can see it does hit this breakpoint now, and I can, because this is called in the tick, right? So it's gonna be ticking every time. Let me copy this value here, and again I'm gonna create a new data breakpoint and put it here, and this time ampersand. That should allow me to do this, right? Hit OK. All right, cool. I'm going to turn off that now. I need to see who is changing that, because when that one becomes true, that's when in that tick we were looking at earlier here, right? Because that Boolean determines this one, because this one is basically returning that Boolean, right? So this has to be true. So who make it true, right? I need to know that. So let me go ahead and continue. You can see it does hit somewhere here, which is, after that you can see it's false here. Its setting is false because, when you process that stimuli already, you can set it to false, of course, because it's not a new stimuli anymore. But I can keep going with that continue. You can see it does hit somewhere else. Okay, here's where it got changed to new, and it's doing this registered stimuli. Let's go inside and take a look. You can see that's where it got set to true, right? Cool. So I know that's where it got to be true. Okay, so let me go back to what we have earlier. Oops. Go back here, and I'm gonna look through the logic here and see what's going on before that. Okay, this function, if you go all the way up, it's called a update. Right? It's keep updating stuff. It's in the sense set. That's good. That means my set is working, right? So let's go back here and see that's where it hits and change the value to be true. And let's trace back, and when I see through all those else, if else things like that, now I don't know what is relevant. Okay, so what I can do here is I can actually say, let me drop down a breakpoint over here, right? And I'm going to continue. I know that it's going to hit that breakpoint at some point. Okay, here, right? And then I just need to go down and see what does this logic go. So it's checking if there's a valid target or there is a valid listener, right? I guess they're all true, but let's take a look at that. You can see it does go true, right? Let's keep going. It's getting an actor. I can check what that actor is afterwards. So go one step forward. You can see that actor is exactly our third-person character, so I'm confirmed that I'm looking at the right position, right place. So I'm going to keep going and see what's going on underneath this. You can see it's a lot of stuff I don't really care about because I don't know what they are. Okay, Let's keep going. You can see it's doing a boolean, but let's keep going and see if that boolean actually goes through this. You can see it actually jumps over that, so that's not really matters. So now it goes to here, and you can see it's getting another boolean, right? Let's see if that boolean works. So if I go, you can see that boolean actually works. So let's see what that boolean is. The boolean is check is target inside. Now that is a good hint that that's probably where we're looking for, because that has to be true to go through, right? I can also see that register stimuli here that we were looking at earlier, that does change the boolean to be true, is actually over here. That has to be true. This one has to be true to allow that. So that's a pretty good hint to tell us that this is where we're looking for, right? So this is checking is target inside. So let's go inside of this function and see, okay, is target inside is determined by two things. One is if the distance is in range. Now that's reasonable, right? Because we have a range. It's using a set radius, which is cool, right? That's actually what we're setting up. You don't know exactly for sure that's the value we're setting up in the editor, but you can assume that that's the one, right? And then you can say you can pretty much assume that this is just trying to see if it's the player character is in range of the site. And then you move down here, you can see that's the direction to target. Here is determined by the target location minus the listener's cache location and get the safe normal, right? Okay. And what it's trying to do is do a dot product. The direction to target is basically from the character of the guard to the character of the player. And it's trying to do a dot product with the direction of the listener's cached direction. Okay, so the listener's cache direction is something you don't know yet, but you know that that direction is where basically a vector pointing from the AES character to the player's character. And dot product is basically giving you like how their direction differ. The more they differ, the smaller you're getting the value, right? So if the value is 1, that means they're actually the same direction. Okay, so this is basically trying to, also you can see it's comparing to the peripheral vision angle, right? So that's a pretty good sign. This is exactly where it's determining if the target is in range, not just the location but also the peripheral vision. Okay. That's really good. So we need to know where this direction goes, right? Where is that direction? So this is, if you think about it, this is basically the direction the AI site configuration is looking towards, right? Is looking towards that looking direction. And if you compare the looking direction of the character, the AI, towards the actual vector pointing from the AI character to the player character, that angle is actually has to be compared with the peripheral angle to know if the player character is in range, right? So this is basically a good hint. This is actually the looking direction. This is determined over here. So I need to know what this guy is determined. So go here, you can see it's determined. It's actually a member variable of this structure. And here you can see, I don't know where it is, but there is an update, right? And I also can just say, let me do a search. Okay, and I know it's in that update, you know, because I did my search and look for that. You can see now it's determined by this cache location. The cache location is getting called by that. So there are a lot of things you can dig in deeper and deeper, but it's actually just over here, the cache location, and it's asking the listener what is the location and direction of this listener. So who is this listener? If you go into this listener, you can see it's actually a weak pointer to the component. So it's basically asking the components, okay, where is your location and direction, right? If you go in there and take a look at what does this component say, it's basically asking the owner actor, where is that actor I viewpoint. Now you know how or why I have to override that function in my new AI controller here, why I'm overriding this get actor I viewpoint, because that's how the site is getting that information here in the source code. Okay, if you can go back there, right? So you can see throughout this process You do have to look through the source code to see what's going on, and there are a lot of things, a lot of confusion sometimes when I'm trying to look through this, but it's a good practice to understand how our Unreal Engine works on the fundamental level. And again, you do have to have the source code to be able to do that. So basically speaking, every time when there is a pawn spawned in the scene, actually in that in the update, or there's a variable here actually called the observed target, and this one will always be adding new ones if you have new pawns. So everyone knows there are a lot of pawns here, so everyone have a reference of every pawn in the scene. Every sense will have that information, but they just compare them with their own sensitivity, and I can use sense that here. So they're checking on their own, but they know actually every little pawn there, and they're just checking every pawn one by one in every tick to see if they're in range. If they are, then they're going to trigger the register stimuli. The register stimuli will make this to be true, and if this is true, again in the AI perception system, it's going to make this true, right? This is going to be true, and this is going to be called in the tick, right? So that's when the process stimuli will be called, and the process stimuli in the perception component will then do all these things all the way down. You can then trace back to see that broadcast, and that's triggering eventually this. Okay, so it takes me some time to figure that out, but you know, this is how I figured this out. Again, you have to look through the source code. That's why I encourage anyone who wants to be serious about Unreal Engine, learn C++ and read the source code. If you wanted to figure something out, you do have to do this. Okay, that's one of the strengths of using Unreal Engine, because you do have the source code. If you don't have the source code, you just don't know, right? You have to ask around. You have to ask their developer to see, to ask them how you can make those changes. Anyway, so that's going to be how I figured this out in a nutshell. In the process, I actually went back and forth because I'm not quite sure about this or that. I have to make sure, so I did a lot of checking. I did a lot of watching on those different variables and see how they're changing. If you want to know more about debugging, you can look through some tutorial on Visual Studio debugging. It's pretty universal actually. But yeah, that's gonna be this video. So thanks for watching. See you next time.